Jackson Trail next.
Good afternoon and welcome. This is a special meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force called for Thursday, January 20th, 2010 at 5 p.m. and beginning at 5:01 p.m. Roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Snyder? Snyder absent. Member Nee?
Here.
Nee present. Member Cawthon? Cawthon excused. Member Manny?
Present.
Manny present. Member Washburn?
Present.
Washburn present. Member Knebber?
Here.
Knebber present. Member Wolf?
Here.
Wolf present. Member Chan? Chan absent. Member Johnson?
Here.
Johnson present. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Items number 1 and 2 have been withdrawn.
Those complaints have been withdrawn?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's just one complaint.
I'm sorry?
It's just one complaint?
Yes, items
It's
1
the-
and 2.
Yes.
Okay, any other agenda changes? Okay, Chair will note that Mr. Wolf may have to excuse himself for a minute regarding some urgent personal business, in which case, if there is no quorum at that time, we will recess. And Mr. Member Chan is just entering. Mr. Clerk, could we have the first item, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first item is determination of jurisdiction on complaint filed by Ray Hartz against the Police Commission for allegedly violating Section 67.15D and the Ruff and Brown Act for interrupting him during public comment.
Is the complainant present? Please approach. Oh, this is jurisdiction. Is there a motion on please proceed. I'm sorry. Is there a motion on jurisdiction?
I move we find jurisdiction.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Is there public comment on whether to accept jurisdiction? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Roll call, please.
On jurisdiction, Member Manny.
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn.
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knebber.
Aye.
Knebber, aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Chan.
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson.
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee.
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, we have 7 ayes.
Thank you. That does take us to the substance, Mr. Hartz. Please approach. Thank you for coming, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Member Commissioners, Ray Hartz, and this commission, actually, this one, I think, seems to me kind of a no-brainer. On the 22nd of September, I attended a meeting of the Police Commission, and during item number 6, I got up and I spoke for 25 seconds, and then I was interrupted by the Vice President, Thomas Mizuko, and that's who this complaint is specifically against. And he said, "Can't I interrupt you for a second? This is a public comment regarding items that were discussed in the Chief's report, the Commissioner's report, and the OCC report. Items that were discussed, not your objections to the items being moved around, so your comments are not consistent and not permitted at this point." My response was, "And you're violating my constitutional rights for free speech." And his answer was, "Oh, absolutely not. I would never do that. I was just following the rules and procedures." Now, what I had gotten up to do, this was the meeting, I will kind of refresh your memory. This was a meeting at which they took the agenda out of order. They covered agenda item 1, agenda item 2A and B, and then they went into a 4-hour recess, came back at the end of that 4 hours, completed item C, and then this is when I got up to make public comment. And I was interrupted and told that I could comment on the substance, but nothing else. In fact, if you look at the letter from the Police Commission to this board, it says, "The Vice President of the Commission commented to the complainant that comments on agenda items are confined to the subject matter of the agenda item itself." And I would submit that is clearly not the case, because Section 67 .15 says, a policy body shall not abridge or prohibit public criticism of the policy, procedure, programs, or services of the city, or of any other aspect of its proposals or activities, or of the acts or omissions of the body on the basis that the performance of one or more public employees is implicated, or on any other basis other than a reasonable time constraint adopted in regulation pursuant to subdivision C of this section. So I talked for 25 seconds, and I was talking about the effect that their handling of this particular agenda item had on this meeting, and I was told I couldn't do that. Now, what they do is they get you in a catch-22. During general public comment, you're not allowed to talk about it because it's on the agenda. And then you get to the agenda item, you're not supposed to talk about it. And apparently, from what I'm reading here, it says it's the policy. And it says here, in response to this task force, Lieutenant Riley wrote this: the Vice President of the Commission commented to the complainant that comments on agenda items are confined to the subject matter of the agenda item itself. And then he goes on to say, nonetheless, I was allowed to continue, but I was not. And the Brown Act violation, the Brown Act basically says public meetings of governmental bodies have been found to be limited public fora. As such, members of the public have broad constitutional rights to comment on any subject relating to the business of the governmental body. Any attempt to restrict the content of such speech must be narrowly tailored to effectuate a compelling state interest. Specifically, the courts found, and they cited some cases, these decisions found that prohibiting critical comments was a form of viewpoint discrimination, and that such a prohibition promoted discussion artificially geared toward praising and maintaining the status quo, thereby foreclosing meaningful public comment. Now, did I continue very briefly? After I told him, you're violating my constitutional rights, and he says, no, I'm not, I said, I think you are, and I think you also violated the constitutional rights of all the members of the public who were here 4 hours ago, who wanted to make comments on this very item, and because you went into recess and stayed there for 4 hours, you denied them the same right, and I sat down. Now, total talking time, less than a minute. And I think each and every one of you knows here, if I have 3 minutes, I can probably fill up for 3 minutes pretty easily. I was stopped. If you have any questions on that, I would refer you to the SFGT website for the meeting on September 22nd. It's at the point of 4 hours and 44 minutes. You can see the whole thing there yourself if you have any questions. There's nothing in this for me to lie about this, for the simple fact that anybody could go and look there and see what happened. After 25 seconds, I was told that I was restricted in what I could comment on. And I felt it was really horrible. That's why I'd stayed around for 4 hours. They had a meeting, they went through this, they didn't stick with the agenda, didn't make any notification of this, just let's move to item 5. And everybody got up and left.
Thank you.
I need to recuse myself for this item because it's a specific person that I have a relationship with.
Okay.
I move if we recuse Member Chan.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call, please.
On Member Chan's recusal, Member Snyder.
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny.
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn.
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knebber.
Aye.
Knebber, aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Johnson.
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee.
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, we have 7 ayes.
Okay. Thank you, Member Chan. Is there anybody here to present facts and evidence in support of the complainant? Seeing none, would the respondent please approach? Thank you for coming, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Tim Falvey. I'm a lieutenant in the San Francisco Police Department, the new secretary of the Police Commission. Turn that off. What I would like to do is read to you some of what you've heard already from Mr. Hartz, and this is basically the reply of the previous commission secretary to the allegation. Bear with me one moment. I'm just going to paraphrase, skip to the highlights. The agenda of the meeting was posted as required, actually more than 72 hours in advance. The commission took general public comment as the first item on the agenda. The latest version of the Good Government Guide states that there are two types of public comment: comment on agenda items and comment on matters not on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the policy body. The latter category is often called general public comment. Good Government Guide further states that members of the public have the right to criticize the policy body's programs, practices, policies, and services, as well as the members and staff. The presiding officer nonetheless may reasonably confine the speaker's comments to the agenda item under consideration, or for general public comment, to the subject matter of the policy body. Let's see. I want to mention that I reviewed the same video that Mr. Hartz did. I have about the same timeline at 4 hours, 44 minutes, 24 seconds. His comment actually begins at 4 hours, 43 minutes, 58 seconds. There's one point where the commissioner does stop and say, "May I interrupt you for a second?" and wants to clarify the point that this is for items that were discussed under 2A, B, and C. It was a 19-second portion in the middle of the comment, at which point he was allowed to proceed. He said that he couldn't continue and that it effectively cut him off. I would argue that's not true. Including the 19-second interruption, he used 1 minute and 23 seconds of his 3 minutes that were allotted to him. He had 1 minute and 37 seconds left that he could have spoken to and chose not to. No one from the commission told him to stop speaking. He was allowed to continue. He chose to stop speaking. He walked away from the podium, leaving more than half his time there. Additionally, I think it's worth mentioning that Mr. Hartz came up on the next agenda item and made the same comments and went through those comments again under the next agenda item uninterrupted. So he wrote a letter on Sunday, October 17th, 2007. The matter of taking the item out of the agenda out of a different order was the subject of a different complaint of his, which I believe has already been through this process. So I want to address that. Like I said, it says, let's see. He says in his letter, on completion of item 2, I attempted to comment on the negative impact that the changes of the agenda had on the ability of the public to comment on them, rather than on the item itself. So in his letter, he says he's here to complain about the way the agenda was moved, not about the items that were discussed on the agenda, which was the point the commissioner was trying to clarify and say this is for items that were discussed in it, and he moved on. The remainder of, I'm quoting Mr. Hartz's letter here. The remainder of my comments were not to complete my public comment, but to object to being interrupted. Mr. Hartz chose to use his time to do that, exercising his free speech. And as I said, he was allowed to continue. He left 1 minute 37 seconds on the clock. He came up on the next item and made the same comments again. So while there was an inquiry from the commission asking, say, may I interrupt you for a second? This is for discussion on the item, not that it was moved. They had a 19-second conversation. It has been the past practice of the department, of the commission, that if somebody wanted more time after being paused for any reason, if there was an interruption in the audience and whatnot, that the commission typically grants that. So he would have been allowed those 19 seconds had he gone up to the 3 minutes, but as he left more than half his time on the table, that's a moot point. But he was allowed to finish his comments. How he chose to use that time was up to him. Words were not put in his mouth. He was not told, you may no longer speak, sit down. He continued his comments. He sat down when he was done speaking. He came up at the next public comment item and made the same point again. And so I don't think that we've abridged, we haven't edited what he could say at that point. He was allowed to finish. He was given plenty of time. And one of the comments he makes in that section is, how I choose to spend my time, how do I choose to get to my point is my decision. And I believe that he was allowed to decide how to proceed. He chose how to proceed. No one else chose it for him. How much time do I have left?
10 seconds.
That was close. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody to present facts and evidence in support of the respondent? Seeing none, the matters with the task force. Member Johnson?
Is this on? I watched the video, and I think the question here is that when Mr. Hartz got up, I felt that he was not commenting that item 5 had been moved, but excuse me, but that there were other people who had wanted to comment on item 2C, which had been held over. And the problem that I had with it is that he was almost, I don't want to say intimidated, but because I don't think he was trying to intimidate him, but he stopped him because he was criticizing their decision to move. And there, in the tape, I'd watched the beginning of the tape for the other case, and in the beginning he doesn't have an opportunity to comment on the moving of the item. So I think the question is whether or not it's only to the actual, substance of that item or anything to do with that particular item, because they never did have an opportunity to comment on moving that particular item. So I felt that it was in violation of the criticism. I don't know that that was intentional, but when they heard the criticism, I think that they stopped him. And had it not been somebody who's familiar with speaking before a commission, it was kind of intimidating to think that you couldn't continue down that line of speaking. And his comment to Mr. Hartz was relatively sarcastic. I would never do that, and it was kind of demeaning.
Member Snyder?
Yeah, just looking at the text of 6715D, I think the question that the task force has to decide, and frankly, I'm not exactly sure yet where I come out on this, is whether there was an abridgment, first of all. So the first thing we have to decide is whether the interruption, which the police commission claims was for 19 seconds, and which left a minute 23 left on Mr. Hartz's speaking time in that particular testimony, constitutes an abridgment under the ordinance. And yeah, I mean, I looked up abridge in the dictionary. I don't know that there's any case law that defines it, but I suspect in this context maybe not. But abridge is to reduce the length of, to cut short, or curtail. So I mean, you could define that very strictly and say that any interruption would constitute an abridgment and is therefore a violation of the statute. That would seem a little extreme to me, because that wouldn't allow for any kind of back and forth from the body hearing testimony and the testifier or the speaker. And so I think it's just kind of a judgment call as to whether this is an abridgment. If we decide that it is an abridgment under the ordinance, I think the next question is whether this was on the basis, whether the abridgment was on the basis of other than reasonable time constraints. And there, the decision for us to make is whether it was to cut off criticism. I think that's the decision to make. So that's just to sort of tee up the issues for everybody. I'm not advocating a...
You're missing one.
Yeah, what?
It says
Member
abridge or
Johnson.
prohibit.
Yeah, I mean, I think prohibit public criticism. I don't think you could go so far as to say that this was prohibiting it.
Wait,
I mean,
he literally, did you watch it?
I haven't watched it,
He
no.
literally tells him, you may not go down this line of discussion. This is an inappropriate, he cuts him off because he says it's an inappropriate line of discussion.
He did later speak, though, right, and criticize the police
Well, they had an
commission, right?
argument about whether or not it was appropriate for him to have a criticism of the item being moved. So in essence, it's not whether, if each time, if you take prohibit quite literally, meaning they make you sit down, then every time somebody bullies someone into what they're saying, you would be, the committee members could end up doing that. Not everybody would be familiar enough with their rights to actually move on. So
Yeah.
I think it's not necessarily, my response is that it's not just about abridging it, whether he was cut short, but also whether they prohibited it. And he literally says to him, this is not appropriate for you to comment on the movement of the item as opposed to the actual substance of the item.
Yeah.
Member Wolf, and then Member Knibber.
So for me, this speaks more, I'd like to use it more in the context of Robert's rules. When in Robert's rules, when somebody's speaking in public comment and is speaking off subject, the question is it germane, okay, or not? And that's what I'd like to maybe focus on, because here we could be splitting hairs on whether this applied to this particular item or not. But really, the question is was he speaking specifically onto the item and about the item, maybe the way the item is being carried out or the way the commission was carrying out the item, which is still, to me, germane about that particular item or not. Now, this particular complaint points specifically to subparagraph D. But I would also, I'm not going to extend it, but I'm saying what I would just like for us to note is that in E, we go back to the concept of any changes to the agenda. And if there is any changes or continuances, it should be announced by the presiding officer. Problem is there's no place in there that says there's public comment for that to allow members of the public to speak about that. So now you have a commission meeting with an item that was specifically agendized for a specific time of the day. You have, 50 people that show up to speak to that item, and now the presiding officer decides, for whatever reason, that it must be moved, because for whatever reason it is, intentional or unintentional, voluntary or involuntary, that item must be moved. Now these 50 people that showed up don't have the ability to make comment on that. Okay, that's a problem to me. So to me, the point is, I believe that if an item is being spoken on and there is concern about that item and how it's being handled, it's still about the item. It's still germane.
Member Knebber.
I agree. I definitely think Mr. Hartz was within his rights to speak on the change of the item here. The problem that I have is, was the time allotted for him to do that? Because I've seen many commissions, in fact, this own commission, where the chair interrupts the speaker and says that we need to be on the right point, whatever. Now, it might be wrong, it might be right, but was Mr. Hartz given the time to speak after that? And did he take it or not? That's different, but that's what it rests for to me. To me, I disagree with Member Johnson. I think that the abridgment is the idea of actually, when you stop, is actually saying you cannot speak. But giving the time the speaker to speak, to me, that is allowing the 3 minutes.
Mr. Hartz?
Yes.
You heard Lieutenant Falvey say that even though you were interrupted, you stepped away from the microphone even though you had time left. Is that true?
Well, after I was told, items that were discussed, not your objections to the item being moved around, so your comments are not consistent and not permitted at this point. I'm thinking, this is a person who took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and he's telling me I don't have the constitutional right to come here and criticize what they did and the effect that I saw it have. And again, I can't prove that they intended to do it or whatever, but I know I walked out with 12 people, and 4 of those people took the time to talk to me, and they had all intended to comment on item 2. And so when I waited around for 4 hours to make that specific comment, it takes a lot to put me off, but it basically was just, does he actually believe he has the right to do this? And at that point, what's your choice? Stand there and argue with him? And then I said, you're violating my constitutional right. No, I'm not.
Did he actually tell you to be seated or to stop that line of comment?
No, but telling me that you can't talk about that. Well, what? Oh, what? So there are special rules here that I can, you can set down rules that I don't know about and limit what I can talk about. I honestly sat down, not because I was finished speaking, but I didn't know what to say. I had no idea where to go. After you're told specifically by the person running the meeting that you can't do this.
Member Johnson.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when I watched the video, it was my impression that he was told that those types of comments were not permitted. And though he was allowed to continue speaking, he had been told not to speak on criticism of moving that item agenda. And the letter from the police commission implies that they perceive public comment as having two kinds of public comment, general and only substantive about the item, and that was not permitted. And though he was given his allotted time, he was told, don't speak about that, about moving the item agenda. They didn't continue to interrupt him, but is he supposed to assume he can just ramble on about it? And in fact, they had an argument over whether he would be allowed to continue to speak along those lines, which implies that they did not feel he was acting appropriately. So he would have had to go out of his way to assert that he would be able to speak about what he wanted to speak about. Otherwise, there would have been no other time for him to talk about the moving of that item. So it doesn't seem to me like the fact that they gave him a minute to speak after they told him don't continue along those lines is as relevant as if they said go ahead and say whatever you want. I mean, he could have assumed that they wouldn't stop him, but why should he have to assume? And I think that the fact they told him he wasn't permitted to do it means that we need to decide if he's permitted, because otherwise that's a violation. They told him he wasn't permitted to criticize the moving of the item agenda. And I think that just because they gave him 1 minute doesn't mean he should have been aware that he could just continue on with what they said not to do.
At this time, the respondent, I'm sorry, Member Washburn.
I'm reading from Mr. Hart's letter of October 17th when he's quoting the commissioner. Can I interrupt you for a second? And the concluding sentence is, so your comments are not consistent and not permitted at this point. So then I was looking for, was there a time for general public comment? I couldn't find that on the agenda. So I'm confused about when, at what point that type of comment would have been allowed. I guess at the very, there's public comment at the beginning.
Perhaps the complainant or the respondent or both could address
Mr.
that topic.
Hartz?
Yes, public comment at the police commission meetings is normally the first item on the agenda, and it was that night.
Member Knebber and Member Snyder.
Well, I guess that's the wrinkle here then, because there's no spot for him to actually address it. Again, I think that he should be allowed to address it at the point the agenda item comes up. So I can see finding violation on that. I still think that, I don't know, I still think that he was given time, but I do think that he was unfairly criticized for the type of comment he was making.
Member Snyder?
Mr. Hartz, can I ask a question? I had understood from earlier testimony that you later commented on what you were interrupted about here. Is that not true? Were you not able to, did you not have a place to pick up your testimony later?
I did not, I didn't go down the same path. I simply repeated the same thing in the next opportunity for public comment. I simply said that, I'm going to say once again that I think a lot of what you've done this evening violated a lot of people's rights.
But okay, so I'm confused because you said earlier that the public comment is at the beginning. Was it the first item on the agenda? Was there also later public comment allowed? General public comment, I should say.
They did item number 1, public comment, general public comment. Then they went to item number 2, did item subsections A and B. Then they moved to item 5, which is move into a private closed session. They went into closed session for 4 hours, came back at 10 o'clock or something that night, and then they completed item 2C, and where I was interrupted was the public comment on item 2, which included the 2 parts before the closed session and the 1 part after the closed session.
So you, after this interruption, you didn't have an opportunity to speak again?
I was told you can't speak about that.
Yeah.
You're.
But I mean, there wasn't another,
Well, there was
comment-
another agenda item, item number 3.
Okay,
And on item number 3, I got up and made a similar comment.
okay, okay.
But, you know,
He didn't cut you off that time?
no. I'll be honest with you, I got up for the intentional purpose to see if he would.
Yeah.
I sat there and I'm thinking to myself, I don't understand this. And I think, I'll be honest with you, what's going through my head is, who is this guy? Does he really think he has the right to interrupt people in public comment? You know, whatever. I subsequently find out the man's an attorney, former prosecutor, member of the California Bar, officer of the court. And I'm thinking, does this guy really think he has the right to stop people in public comment? And he stopped me. I mean, you know, that was it. You know, they can say, oh, well, you were allowed. I sort of, as I was walking away, was kind of going, you know, I don't think this is fair. I think you violated my rights, and I think you know, whether you, and he denied it, and I'm saying, no, your simple denial doesn't make it so.
Member Johnson.
I also want to point out that I don't think 6715D is about time. It's not about, that's not the section of the Sunshine Ordinance we use to govern time. It's about prohibiting public criticism on any basis other than a reasonable time constraint. And so it's not really about whether or not you got your 3 minutes or you're up to 2 minutes. It's about whether or not they told you you got somehow, you were prohibited somehow from making a critical statement of procedures or proposals or activities. And the fact that the person running the meeting says your comments are not permitted, how much more prohibitive can you get than that, other than speaking over him?
Yeah, I mean,
Member Snyder.
I think I generally agree with you all. I think it's a closer case than that, and I think the commissioner's statement itself contains this sort of conflicted notion about what exactly he thought he was doing. Because the first thing he says is, "Can I interrupt you for a second?" Okay, but then he says not permitted. But then he says not permitted at this point, and then he didn't cut him off later. I think someone of lesser persistence than Mr. Hart's might not have tried the second time around. But we do have to factor in that he had the opportunity the second time around.
Would he have talked, if they told him he couldn't talk about moving the item 2C during public comment for 2C, what would he have talked about on item 3? Why would you expect him to then get up and talk about the moving of the item of 2C? I don't understand why the onus is on the public to know that you're not supposed to say it's not permitted.
I'm just saying I think it's a closer case than it. I don't think it's as easy to say that this was flat out prohibition, because I'm not sure that that's, well, in any event, I think a case could be made either way, frankly. But
At this time, the respondent and then the complainant will each have 3 minutes to make any concluding or rebutting remarks. Lieutenant Falvey.
I think the main point of his interruption, what he stated, was he was trying to keep this on task with the agenda item, not necessarily prohibiting, which was, I mentioned earlier in the Good Government Guide quote about you can inquire as to whether things are on the topic. He was allowed to finish his time. The paperwork you have in front of you. The item of the public comment was moved to item number 1. As I believe at earlier meetings, Mr. Hartz had requested it be earlier in the meeting so that people wouldn't have to sit through the other items, as evidenced by the fact we had a 4-hour closed session on discipline cases. So that's why the public comment was at the beginning. Dr. Marshall announced at the beginning that we had a lot of items, so we'd be taking them out of order because we needed to get to that closed session. That was the earlier complaint that he made, that item. So I think the fact that he was allowed to continue, that it was under the Good Government Guide as listed in Lieutenant Riley's letter. Presiding officers nonetheless may reasonably confine the speaker's comments to the agenda item under consideration. So as far as whether it was criticism or not of the agenda item, I just think the letter, that's what the intent was there, was just to keep it focused on what we were talking about at that moment. There had been earlier public comment in item number 1. And I believe the fact that we were going to potentially have to move an item around was announced before the public comment. So the public could have commented that night about that. We didn't know yet what time. I don't recall the exact reasons. There was, I think we were waiting for the arrival of a witness. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Hartz, 3 minutes.
I'll sort of go on Member Johnson's comment. How are members of the public supposed to know when they're told you can't talk about that, what they're supposed to do? Yes, I know the law, and that's why I said I was flabbergasted, because I stood there and I said, you know, everything I know about the Sunshine Ordinance, the Brown Law Act, and constitutional rights we all have, I have the right to get up and make this comment. And I'm being told flatly, you cannot comment on this. And I had a choice. Do I stand there and argue with them and take the chance they're going to call the sheriff and have me dragged out? Or do I simply just go, I didn't know what to say? And I think it also, that same evening, happened to someone else. He interrupted someone else, and the man said, how can you know that I'm not allowed to say this? Are you a mind reader? And it was the same member. And frankly, I don't think it should be some sort of a gauntlet that a citizen has to pass to get up, be challenged, have to say, no, I think I can say this, I think it's legal, or whatever. And in this particular case, I couldn't even muster an argument at that point, because what he was saying to me seemed so outrageous. I just, you know, and as I said, I made a parting shot as I went, just to get it on the record, that I think that you are violating my rights. And I think it's very clear that he did. And the very intention was, I was there criticizing the fact that they had done what they had done with the agenda, and this item had been split the way it was with a 4-hour break, and that members of the public that I had talked to had wanted to comment on this, and as a result were not allowed to. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. My feeling was that it was. They saw there were a lot of people there. They didn't want to have to sit through a whole bunch of public comment. So they simply moved item number 5, went into closed session with the knowledge that everybody would be gone by the time they came back. And sure enough, that was the case. I had time to go home, write out my complaint, go back, and then I waited another 2 hours to make this comment. And then I'm told, you can't say that. And, you know, why should any citizen have to deal with someone simply flat out saying, you can't criticize us? That's what he was saying. You can't talk about this. And why would he say it other than the fact that he didn't like the idea that I was criticizing what they'd done, which is exactly what I was doing.
Matter is back with the task force. Is there a motion? Member Johnson.
I just wanted to say that the beginning of the meeting, that though they do say that they may move some items around, there's no indication of which items would be moved or when they would be moved. And the movement doesn't come until after 2B, well after general public comment has gone on. So the idea that they could have criticized when they moved is wrong. They could not, nobody knew. They could have criticized that they were moving the agenda items around, but even the officers, even the commissioners didn't know exactly when the movement would happen. And I think you can hear from the lieutenant's own testimony this evening that he does not consider criticizing the movement of an item as something that you can talk about during that item's public comment. So I think that criticism of moving an item can happen during the public comment of that item. And I think if we find them not in violation of 67.15D, they're going to continue to assert that public criticism of moving an item agenda is not appropriate during that item's public comment. So I would move to find violation of 6715D.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Member Knabber.
Okay, I would support this because, as I said before, I do think that that Mr. Hartz was well within his rights to criticize the movement of this agenda item during the discussion of this agenda item. The problem that I had before was that he didn't get his time or he was stopped from speaking. But on that basis, the idea that he has a right to criticize, and he was stopped from doing that. The Mr. Mancuso, I guess, stopped him from criticizing the movement because he said that's out of bounds. That's why I would support this measure.
Is there public comment on this item?
Good evening, President and Commissioners. I have to agree with Mr. Hart's. When a person goes to a hearing and he's focused on talking about a particular topic, number 2, whatever the case may be, and then someone says you're not permitted to talk about it, what do you do? I mean, you don't have anything else that you want to talk about. You just sit down. I mean, I think that's really unfair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
My name is Deborah Benedict. I'm here for another issue, but after hearing this, it would seem that any board or agency could simply say at the beginning of a meeting, we may have to move some agenda items and utilize that as a wedge, and especially in a situation where there's 4 hours that the public's being asked to not attend and wait for them to reopen. And then when you have an opportunity, I'm not an expert on Robert's Rules of Order, but I certainly understand that, opening comments, are one thing, but when you get to a specific item and you're supposed to be able to comment on that item and you can't do that, there's no other time. That's the only time. So to me, honestly, it looks like this could be, if you don't find this in violation, I believe that this will open the door for any group to say at the beginning of each meeting, we could potentially move around these items and then do the same kind of thing. What a perfect manipulation of the system. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment on this item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Before the vote is taken, the chair wishes to make one comment. It is true, I think, that there is a right and perhaps a responsibility on the part of somebody chairing a meeting to make sure that public comment on an agenda item pertains to that item. However, as an addition to that, I also think that the procedural aspect of an item is equally important as in some cases more important than the substantial part of that item. So I believe that in this case, Mr. Hart was acting within his rights, and I will support the motion. Further comment by the task force. Roll call, please.
On the motion, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knebber?
Aye.
Knebber, aye. Member Wolf?
Member Wolf had to step away. He's excused for the moment.
Member Johnson?
Aye.
Member Johnson. Member Nee?
Aye.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we have 6 ayes. Motion passes.
The motion passes. I'd like to thank both the complainant and the respondent for coming. And this matter is referred to the Education and Outreach and Training Committee. Mr. Clerk, could you call the next item, please?
Item number 5 is determination of jurisdiction on complaint filed by Ray Hartz against the Library Commission for allegedly violating Section 67.16 by not allowing his 150-word statement to be entered into the minutes.
Is there a motion to find jurisdiction?
I move we find jurisdiction.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion. Is there public comment on the question of jurisdiction of this item? Seeing none, roll call, please.
On jurisdiction, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knebber?
Aye.
Knebber, aye. Member Wolf? Member Wolf excused. Member Chan?
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee?
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, we have 7 ayes.
Before we proceed with substance, we have received a notification from Sue Blackman, the Secretary of the Library Commission, that the Library Commission is meeting, and so she cannot attend this hearing, and she said she will also be on vacation the week of January 24th. She would like it rescheduled. Now, As far as January 24th, I would not be inclined to continue it then, but perhaps now, since the Library Commission is meeting now, perhaps we could continue this till our next regular meeting, which is Tuesday, January 25th.
Microphone, please.
Microphone.
Maybe I misread it, but will someone else be able to represent her because she says that she'll be on vacation the week of the
Well,
20th?
then it will be it will be her responsibility or the responsibility of the Library Commission president to make sure somebody is here who
Yeah,
can
definitely.
who can speak to the item. Member Knebber.
I think it's usual form, I don't think it's required, but it's our usual form to ask the complainant if they had any comments on this procedure.
I would do so. Mr. Hartz, please approach.
To be very frank about it, I would like to continue with this for the simple fact that in the past, the Library Commission has shown a very dismissive attitude toward the operations of this body. There was a complaint with Sue Cawthon versus Library Commission, and the president of the commission and Sue Blackman simply refused to show up for the meetings at all. And she finally showed up at the very last meeting, and that was it. Very honestly, this has gone on for a long time. I think it's a very simple case, and I would like to go ahead and argue it. And if you do not want to make a decision and want to continue after that fact, I would certainly have no objection to that, but I would like to go ahead and present my case tonight.
Okay, the complainant has indicated he would like to present his case tonight. I think this raises a question, and maybe the task force doesn't want to decide it right now, but it might raise the question of whether later on during tonight's proceeding we would want to continue. Member Knebber.
I understand Mr. Hart's sentiment, but I think that if we continue it, we should continue it all, and not cut off in the middle. I think if he's willing to continue, I think that he being able to present that case in the face of the respondent will be better for all concerned. That's just my opinion.
I agree with that. I think it's important that if we continue it such that both sides can present their case in front of each other.
I'm just wondering what time the Library Commission meeting starts. Does anyone know? Mr. Hartz, do you know?
It started at 4:30.
Started at 4:30, so presumably it's proceeding even now as we speak. Chair would recommend that this matter be continued to, the entire matter be continued to our next regular meeting, Tuesday, January 25th, without objection.
Just a point
Member-
of clarification
member-
on that. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Member Money.
Sorry. On that, are we able to reach out to them to through a letter or something just to ensure that they are available and reliable to attend?
Well, that is normal procedure.
Okay.
The administrator will perform that function. Without objection, this matter is continued to the regular meeting of January 25th. Mr. Clerk, could you call the next item, please?
Item number 7 is determination of jurisdiction on complaint filed by Peter Witt against the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency for allegedly misleading and misrepresenting the public, failure to include public correspondence in the PCNN process, and failure to include a 150-word statement in the minutes.
I move we find jurisdiction.
Second.
Moved and
Second.
seconded. Discussion. Is there public comment on the jurisdiction question of this item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Roll call, please.
On the motion, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knebber?
Aye.
Knebber, aye. Member Wolf?
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Chan?
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee?
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, we have 8 ayes.
Thank you. That takes us to substance. Mr. Witt. Thank you for coming, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President or Mr. Chairman. And thank you for your attention on this item. However, point of order, if I may, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask the task force to redress a complaint against the Taxi Commission 08053 in November, filed November of '09. I mean, yeah,
Okay,
filed.
Mr. Witt,
Excuse me.
Mr. Witt, let me caution you. We are now on matter 10056. It is your 5 minutes, sir.
It's because of a trend line, and because the force determined in January of '09 it needed more evidence of support to support my complaints. My complaints, by the way, were 27 complaints, 6 violations, and 37 pages of extra evidence I submitted in '09. I got an email inviting me for a sit-down in March. I submitted the evidence in February. I was out of the country, excuse me, I was sorry I missed that sit-down meeting with the chair because I was out of the country falling in love with my wife. I'm a first-timer. So, however, I'm back now and I would like clarification. I submitted evidence in October of '09 when I filed this complaint for the MTA. It's a trend line. Again, there's a trend line. I have never gotten an official response to my complaint 08053. The Taxi Commission is a legislative body of government. Unfortunately, the Taxi Commission merged with the MTA, and now MTA picks up right exactly where Taxi Commission left off. As a quasi-judicial body, a legislative body of government, they set the standards for others to follow, the Taxi Commission and now the MTA. The PCN is a process. It's a process whereby it's an annual process held every year. Now, the Taxi Commission didn't do that. And the Taxi Commission was supposed to define peak times before they added more cabs. Now, they added more cabs, but they did not define peak times. That was a mandate ordered by the Board of Appeals in 1998. I was the appellant. That merger was supposed to be seamless. I can date missing 150-word briefs from 2004. I've asked the Taxi Commission for a log of those missing minutes, missing 150-word briefs, a log of those, 27 complaints. There's a clear gap in the data. The archives, the taxi archives have been deleted. Only go back to '07, and during '07's PCN supporting documents, those have been deleted. And it goes beyond, that website goes beyond 2007, PCN and hearing. It's embarrassing to show the data that they used to add more cabs. Or does it go further than that? Clearly, on August 12th, '03, I was not allowed to use the projector while Barry Toronto was. That was to show my survey. The board missed that. The task force missed that, and again needed more evidence to support the complaints, but did not respond to my letters of inquiry or my extra evidence that I submitted. It's not about what he said and she said. It's about this little survey. But the force missed that. Let's see. And let's see, I have what the Taxi Commission used to add more cabs in '07. The PCN documents that are missing on the website, on the taxi website. This is the little survey. This is the last The last survey I submitted to the MTA. That's one of the 11 that I submitted to the Taxi Commission. I've submitted 2 to the MTA. The PCN process seems to be forgotten by the MTA as well. In fact, I think they want to just eliminate it altogether. I've submitted reports, preliminary reports, and the Taxi Commission, which is not on the website, comes up with 6 responses from the public. I come up with 1,000 every year. They put together a colored diagram which is unreadable. February 07, they came up with 37 responses.
Excuse me, Mr. Witt,
to
your
add
5
more
minutes
caps.
has expired. Could you wrap up, please?
Clearly, yes, I can. I'll try real quick. Is the survey that I had submitted on the last hearing that they had, they didn't include. They didn't include it twice. It's just a simple survey. They've also included. I guess my time's run out.
Thank you.
I don't want to exceed.
Is there anybody here to present facts and evidence in support of the complainant? Seeing none, is the respondent present? Mr. Hart?
I just want to comment on something that is in the agenda, which apparently he did not have time to get to, and that is the matter of the, failure to include a 150-word statement in the minutes. This is an ongoing issue between a lot of citizens and the board. The Sunshine Ordinance, the law covering this, clearly says that if a person submits a 150-word or less summary of their comments, that they are to be included in the minutes. And everybody in these commissions simply points to the Good Government Guide and says, oh, Good Government Guide says, attached to, appended to, whatever, is good enough for government work. I had a conversation with Matt Dorsey of the City Attorney's Office on Tuesday. And that 15-minute conversation, I asked him specifically, does the Good Government Guide hold any weight of law? Is it a legal opinion? And he said, no, it is what it says on the front. It is a guideline. So basically what you have is you have the law that says that the 150-word comments must be included in the minutes. And instead, what they're choosing to do is ignore that and go with the less onerous one, which is the Good Government Guide, which has no weight of law at all. And I think they're doing that with the sole purpose of keeping public comment out of the minutes and allowing them to abridge them by putting in their summary of what the person says. I'll give you an example. The Library Commission, over the last 6 months, I have submitted 12 statements, written summaries, 150 words. Every one of those has been appended to the minutes. And in its place, in the minutes, they have substituted their interpretation. And the way it works is, if I say good things, it is a pretty close approximation to what I said. And if I say something they don't like, it is shortened and changed. And I think this is very clear. It's the law versus somebody's opinion.
Thank you. Is there anybody else to offer facts in evidence in support of the complainant? Seeing none, is the respondent present? Thank you for coming, ma'am. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Roberta Boomer. I'm the secretary to the MTA Board of Directors. Good evening. I cannot speak to the former Taxi Commission actions, nor can I speak to the Library Commission actions. I did submit a letter in response to Mr. Witt's complaint with regard to his allegations of misleading and misrepresenting the public through the minutes, failure to include public correspondence in the PCN process, and omitting the 550-word statement. As I said in the letter, when Mr. Witt has addressed the MTA Board of Directors, he has stated that the public has been misled. As you can see from the minutes that were provided to you, I have, although minutes are supposed to be a summary, I have repeated his statement that Mr. Witt stated that the minutes are misleading. However, how they are misleading, he does not elaborate, and therefore I have no way to address that issue because any case. Failure to include public correspondence in the PCNN process. The SFMTA Board of Directors has not held a public convenience and necessity hearing since it assumed oversight of the taxi cab industry in 2009. It is my understanding that the PCNN hearing is a biannual process, and it is my understanding that the taxi cab division within the SFMTA plans to hold a PCNN hearing this year with the board, at which time any correspondence provided with reference to the PCNN hearing will be included in the public record and will be maintained in the communications received file for the required 2 years. Lastly, the 150-word statement. The Sunshine Ordinance states, 67.16 states, any person speaking during public comment may supply a brief written summary of their comments, which shall, if no more than 150 words, be included in the minutes. What Mr. Witt submitted was a blank survey form, which he referenced in his comments, and the reference to his submittal were included in the minutes. I don't think that a blank survey form is something that can be considered a written summary of the comments. He has provided copies of his survey to the MTA board. All members of the MTA board have received his survey form, and in compliance with the Sunshine Ordinance, they are always maintained in the 3-day communications received file, the 30-day communications received file, and then are kept on file for the required 2 years. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there anybody to present facts and evidence in support of the respondent? Seeing none, matters with the task force. Mr. Witt, please approach the microphone. Can you give us an example of a 150-word or less summary of your comments that were not included in the minutes?
Yes, I can, but I'd also like to give you a summary of what was included in the minutes that I never said.
Okay, and would you just
that I never said.
Mr. Witt, would you just answer the question, please?
I can. I believe it was, I'm not sure what the complaints I listed, one date. I talked all about the minutes. And because I saw the previous minutes, words were added to the minutes that I never spoke, I decided to take a survey down and submit that as my brief. Because for the last 13 years, I've been talking about this survey, okay? And it's been covered up. We don't know where it went. We don't know what the results are. Nobody's analyzed it. And the next meeting, because it was not added in the minutes, and because that it happened just recently and I haven't had a chance to submit that evidence, the last time I was at the whatever they are, Taxi Commission, MTA, I spoke the very words on that survey to make sure what I said was what I submitted. The exact words of my survey. And since they can pick and choose what they put in that's incomplete, like for instance, R&D, research and development. They'll put research, but they'll forget the development part. Okay, that's just an example of half of a statement where they can include something and then, let's say I talk up something, but then I'll talk it down. They'll leave the down part out and they'll put in the up part. They completely left out any words that I wrote on the survey and said on that meeting.
Thank you. Member Chan.
Was the Taxi Commission televised? Right. And it should have file on it, right?
Well, the Taxi Commission is not relevant here. This is a complaint against the Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Or is that...
But those meetings are televised, yes. Live, I believe. Member Wolf.
Ms. Boomer? We just heard testimony from Mr. Witt that he said his public comment at the time was specifically from the survey form that he submitted in. Do you know that to be true? Is how he presented himself during that meeting? And we don't have any evidence of the actual transcripts of the meeting, but to your best recollection.
On August 3rd,
Can you pull the microphone a little closer to you, please?
On August 3rd, he provided a copy of the customer survey, and he spoke about it. The following meeting, he did exactly read the questions, and the minutes from a subsequent meeting, which are a summary, stated that he read each of the questions from his survey, and then I described the questions that he spoke about. Again, the minutes are a summary, and they are not a word-for-word transcription.
Except as you had so rightly noted in 6716, a brief written summary of their comments, which shall, if no more than 150 words, be included in the minutes.
Yes.
If the person had provided it. So if the form was up to 150 words, and that is what he spoke from.
And he didn't read the entire summary. He read some of the questions from the summary, but he didn't say name. He did not read name, box.
Either way,
Yeah.
it's a summary. So
yeah.
the question is whether he read more or less. It's a reference. So the question I'm trying to get, the answer I'm trying to get at is whether he spoke in a completely different context from what was on the paper that he submitted.
Well, that was a subsequent meeting, and this complaint has to do with the August 3rd meeting. He spoke about the summary.
All right.
He spoke about the survey, and he provided a copy of a blank form of the survey to me, which was distributed to the MTA board. The reference was included. I noted in the minutes that he provided the blank form to the board.
So let's just to be clear, August 3rd, he tried to submit the form
He
that
gave
he
me the
wanted.
blank copy, yes.
That was the day that he wanted the form to be included in the minutes. Did he speak from that form, or did he speak exclusive of the form?
I don't recall. I know at that meeting he did not read the questions on the form.
August 3rd.
Yes.
It was the meeting prior to that.
It was a meeting
After that.
after.
Okay, Mr. Witt, please. I'll give you this opportunity to make any corrections or to help us out here on this particular point. Other members may have questions about other points because there's a lot here.
Can you repeat?
So the point here is I'm taking up the point about what you had mentioned about the survey and the document that you wanted to have been included. You had testified just a moment ago that you were in a meeting, you had read from the form, okay, and that you had submitted that form to be included in the minutes as your summary, your 150-word summary, and that was not included in the minutes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I read that verbatim, each question.
Can you tell me which meeting that was?
The subsequent meeting to August 3rd.
The subsequent meeting of August 3rd, okay. And is your complaint in regards to that subsequent meeting, or is your complaint with regards to the August 3rd meeting?
Yeah, no, my complaint was to August 3rd because they had, on June 1st, they had added the words, good morning, Goliath, or should I say BP for short. I never said those words, and yet they were in the minutes, and that's why
you're going off subject here. Okay.
Well, that's why I did the survey without actually reading it verbatim, because they were accepting a written statement and printing it fully without what I said. I didn't say that.
Okay.
So I'll say, I didn't say it, and they printed it. So why not add a survey, give them a survey, because this is what they've been hiding under the rug all this time. Give them a survey and see what they do with it. And sure enough, they add words that humiliate me and make me look stupid, but they wouldn't add anything that made me look intelligent or them stupid.
I'm just trying to ascertain whether, you know, when I mean,
And the
the
second
law is very clear, okay? And I'm just trying to ascertain whether there's a violation or not, because you state that your document, which you're considering your survey to be your summary, okay?
No,
whether that
complete, no summary.
I'm sorry.
No summary. Complete, within 150 words, that's the total summary. This survey is all, it consists of less than 150 words.
No, okay, so all I'm saying is the law just says a brief written summary
I'm sorry,
of your
pardon.
comments. So
Apologize.
I'm reading the word for word from the law. So I'm
Yeah.
using that as my basis to.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay, so,
I'm-
but the point is whether that brief written summary that is the survey is part of your public, part of your public comment.
It was my main part.
Okay.
The main part of my
Okay.
public comment. And
That's
you know,
all. That's all I need to know.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. I
That's
don't mean
it.
to.
Thank you. I'm going to let
Apologize.
other members ask you
Absolutely,
questions because there's other
absolutely.
parts. Thank
I
you.
am sorry.
Member Johnson?
Ms. Boomer? I'm just curious, first of all, why the August 3rd minutes? You sent us was it you attached the minutes to your response? But the August 3rd minutes are not here.
I don't know
Okay.
what happened.
So at the August 3rd meeting, he did not read from the survey. He read from the survey at the following meeting.
Yes. He spoke about the survey and provided a copy of it to the board.
At the August 3rd.
Yeah.
At the
Mr. Witt?
August 3rd meeting.
Yes.
If I'm just curious if it's your opinion that if at the September or whatever the subsequent meeting was, if he read the survey and then gave it to you as the 150-word summary, would you then attach it? I mean,
Well-
even in light of what we're talking about now, if he just read it verbatim, and asked you to attach it as the 150-word summary?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, the respondent and then the complainant. The respondent first and then the complainant will each have 3 minutes to provide us with any concluding or rebutting remarks.
Thank you. Again, as you know, the minutes are a summary of a written statement. And so if Mr. Witt at any time references the survey and speaks about other things, everything that he addresses will be summarized in the minutes. Mr. Witt does often provide a written summary with the request that they be included in the minutes. His original paper is always attached to the printed minutes. However, I take great care to also type them into the minutes and attach them too, because his format, if you reproduce it electronically, it's a PDF, which is not accessible to a person with disabilities. I not only reproduce his comment, his written statement, but I also attach his original written statement so that there can be no question that I have reproduced exactly what it is that he says. That's about all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Witt? You have 3 minutes, sir.
Run up here. Listen, I reiterate, I would recall a point of order. I would like
Mr. Witt,
it's my speech.
Mr. Witt, please confine your remarks to the matter at hand, which is 10056.
Which goes past, beyond the evidence that you needed for taxi commission. It's not being addressed, and I would like it addressed, and I would like an official response to my complaint that was in your jurisdiction, 3/27, 16, 15, and 21. First of all, PCNN is an annual process. It is not a biannual process. Or does that mean once every 2 years, or twice 1 year? All right? Next, the minutes are not taken from the summary written statements. They're taken from the speaker at the time. The written statements are the written statements. And if they want to delete or add to them, it seems like they can. All right, on April 6th, she supplied quite a few minutes. You'll note that there is they point to where the attachment will be on April 6th, on April 20th. They do not note that there's an attachment. And they also give an exact version of whatever I've written. That can be in bold type so I can see it and read it for speech purposes. And if I cross out a word, they'll put that in. Anything I do, if I said a bad word, they'd put that in. But I don't necessarily have to say it, and they'll put it in verbatim, exactly the way I gave it to them. All right, May 4th. They also did not note my extra words that were added, which misleads the public. Now, I can refer to you August 3rd. Item 11. A number of speakers spoke, but not one comment was made. They just list Mark Gruber and Peter Witt opposed the item. Nothing was said. No comments were put in there at all. Now that's misleading the public, and it's also misleading the public when the executive director here says that that survey was intended for the board. It says it in the minutes. It was not intended for the board. Right clearly on top it says to be entered into the minutes. Now that's for the public's purpose only, specifically for the public's purpose. So that's a misleading statement right there. So when she adds words on whatever date, July 1st, good morning Goliath, or should I say BP for short, those were not said words, and yet she added those in the minutes. The consistency is consistently inconsistent, okay? But it's a trend line that goes back to the Taxi Commission when I was denied the projector use and Barry Toronto was allowed the projector. You didn't see it. It was on the video. You had plenty of time to look at that. You missed it then. I hope you don't miss it now. You can make up for lost time. It was a shame. There was a lot of problems in 03, 04. 05 was an exceptional year because there was no problems. But 06 and 07 and 08, I have complained, and that's what my last complaint was about. 05, 08, 03, 05-3. That was listed 27 violations, not just one. And there's more than this because of the new violation that I have not been allowed to submit evidence to. You won't see that in the minutes. You won't see that you'll see it, although if you go to SFG TV. But I urge you to go to SFG TV and examine what I said because you'll never find it on the minutes.
Thank you. Matters back with the task force.
Mr. Chair, just...
Member Wolf?
I guess one of the... this has been brought up a couple of times, and I'm not sure whether this is actually correct or not, but on page 156 is what Mr. Witt is talking about with regards to the good morning, go lie, or I call you BP for short. He's saying that he never said that before. I don't know, maybe I think we should ask Ms. Boomer if that was really submitted in writing to her, and included if that was correct or not. I don't know whether it's pertinent at this time.
Mr. Chair.
Member Kneber?
I think that this is kind of outside the complaint. I think that it is a separate matter, but
explain.
Is there a motion?
I would make a
Member Wolf?
motion, just for the sake of exercise, to find a violation of 6716 with regards to the survey piece.
Is there a second? The motion dies for lack of a second. Okay, no, Member Johnson.
And Mr. Witt, could I just ask you a question about the when you were speaking at the last time you were here at the podium, you said that you did not say good morning, Goliath.
That's correct.
And then, but it's my understanding that that the last page of the June 1st meeting is a copy, a PDF of what you sent her to summarize? Or are you saying that you didn't?
That is a copy. That's yes. That's what I gave. I can be frank, if I may, if I could just take a second. I've worked for 13 years. When I found out you can put the minutes in, or 150 words in, yes, that was the first thing, one of the first things I wanted to do. I made that nice and neat, and I had to write a speech for myself to read it, and then at the end, you know, I've been disillusioned, disenfranchised with the whole process of actually government working. Now, so
Are you
at the
saying
end,
that
in the
she
end,
should have taken that out because you didn't say it? Is it?
well, she printed it, and I never said it. So what do you think?
Well, what I'm saying is that in the actual minutes themselves, she does not write it. That when the actual minute,
No.
those aren't in there. But if you provided that to her and she attaches a copy, it's not that at first I thought you were saying she wrote that you had said it, but she just put in what you had provided to her without editing it. Although I'm not sure exactly what the rule would be about her editing the 150
yeah,
word
sorry to
statement.
go into a
So
gray area there.
That would be difficult,
But that's why I, the next time I said, well, since the door's open, I talk all about the survey. It's all about data. When I talk about numbers and statistics, times and dates, they don't show up, and the numbers do not show. The comments show, but the statistics
have
don't.
you asked her, at the next meeting when they approve the minutes, have you made comments that you felt that were misrepresented?
Yes, I have. I could look those up for you if you'd like. I have made several comments to correct the minutes, which do represent me. I've even listed off the, say, 3 occasions in one particular item that, yes, this, and this should be corrected. No corrections were made. How many times can I do that before I just get fed up? More than once I've done that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, no motion has come forward. The only motion that came forward did not receive a second. Therefore, the chair will declare this matter concluded. At this time, we will take general public comment on items not appearing on tonight's agenda. Each speaker will have 3 minutes.
Well, I comment. I have a question. What does that mean, concluded? I called up my name is Peter Witt, yellow cab driver, 22 years, native San Franciscan. I called up today about finding out what number my complaints were that got lost. And then in the process, there was no determination made on a couple of my complaints. Again, no determination was made. And the conclusion was that I needed more evidence. Now, without looking at the evidence, which I presented to you, which are times and dates, the minutes, without looking at that evidence, I don't know how you can make a complete conclusion. So I'm at a loss for words here. Again, now, so do I need to provide additional evidence? You know, it strikes me as very odd as when things are missing, how can I provide that? I've provided you the survey the piece of paper that says minutes, to be entered into the minutes. It's what I said verbatim. They're not there. No, nothing, I don't even, whatever, when I say name, address, phone number, no, not phone number, district, neighborhood, city, country you come from. Do you take the bus, muni, a bus, taxi, both, or other? I say those words. None of those words are in there. Not one word in the survey is in my speech, is in the summarized minutes. The summarized minutes. Not one word from that survey that I submitted. I'm appalled. But we're right back to square one in 2003, when it was right there on tape. You can go look at it for yourself. I read off the whole survey. Very frustrated, you know. Toronto gets to use a projector. Other people can put comments in, and when I do put my comments in, blah, blah, blah. You know, this needs to go to the newspapers, the press, somewhere besides this little bubble that we live in here in San Francisco. What Mr. Bruce Schaller, hired consultant, recommended was the heart of the survey, the heart of PCNN, which has not been performed. We haven't addressed the performance of PCNN. Should be done. It should be done. How come we're not doing it? Cab drivers are the weakest. They're not lawyers. They're not smart. They're the most vulnerable. They have no representation. And you have taken this to the max. We are the niggers. I'm going to say that. We are the niggers of them right now, in my opinion, because it keeps going from black to women, or was it women to black? Anyway, taxi drivers here in San Francisco, no raise, no nothing. For 10 years, I'm going to say effectively, not one increase in the income, in the earnings. They don't keep up with that's supposed to be done at PCNN. They're supposed to keep the standard of living equal. They're not supposed to surpass it, but they're supposed to keep up with it and keep it.
Thank you, Mr. Witt. Is there further general public comment?
Members of the task force, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. I'm a member of Mensa, and I don't say that to brag. I just want to, say that there's verifiable proof that I'm not a dumb bunny. And I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of evenings that, just as you probably are, I sit at home and I go, well, there's another task force meeting, and should I bother or whatever. But I really do it for one particular reason, because there are a lot of folks out there who are members of the public who don't know the rights under Sunshine, who don't know the rights under the Brown Act. And as a result, often when they're told by a board or commission you can't speak, or you can speak about a certain subject, they assume that they're being treated fairly, and they just sort of say, well, God, that doesn't seem fair to me, but, would these people lie to me? The Good Government Guide is not the force of law, and yet it is continually used by city agencies. It was used tonight by the police department, and it's been used continually, although it has no force of law whatsoever. And it really does tell people that you can ignore what the law actually says and do other things. And you can disregard the impact, and that's what they do. Another thing that really bothers me is people who use the idea that non-participation is one of their options. Like when the Coffin case came before this body, and the only person who finally did show up was Sue Blackwell, who's the commission secretary, who's no way responsible. Tonight with the police commission, my complaint was specifically against a member for his actions and behavior at the board. But does he show up? No, he sends somebody else and expects them to answer for his behavior. And I think it's really kind of unacceptable that city people will accept a position on a city board. They will put on their agenda that you should know your rights under Sunshine, and when someone actually actively engages and places a complaint in Sunshine, they ignore it. They ignore you. They ignore the whole process. You can find them in violation, and they'll ignore it still. You can send it to the Ethics Commission, and the Ethics Commission say your behavior was not appropriate, and they ignore it. And then they very politely will sit at the next meeting and say, well, how are we going to put this into the minutes so that nobody can charge us with not putting it in? But how can we say it in such a way that really what we can do is all ignore it? And that's the unfortunate part to open government. It's really people who won't take responsibility for their own actions, who really do feel that, oh, they took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, that they can sit there and disregard that and simply refuse to engage in the process.
Thank you. Is there any further general public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Mr. Clerk, could you call the next item, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 9 is determination of jurisdiction on complaint filed by Dorian Maxwell against the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency for allegedly refusing to provide information contained in her personnel file.
Okay, is there a motion for jurisdiction?
I move we find jurisdiction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Is there any public comment on the jurisdiction question? Seeing none, roll call, please.
On jurisdiction, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knepper?
Aye.
Knepper, aye. Member Wolf?
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Chan?
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee?
Aye.
Aye, Mr. Chair, we have 8 ayes.
Thank you. That brings us to substance. Is the complainant present?
Yes, President.
You're Mr. Maxwell?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we want to apologize, first of all, for the misreference to your gender.
Oh, that's understandable. It's a universal name anyway.
But anyway, thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Basically, what I need to talk about is a matter that they're trying to terminate me for. And when I had the Skelly hearing, they failed to give me the documents that they're using to terminate me with. And after the Skelly, I was actually kicked out of the Skelly hearing and threatened to have the law enforcement called on me because I spoke out and asked for to review the information, and I requested to stand up, requested to have whatever you're using against me, which it says under California law that I'm supposed to have any access to any documents being used towards any disciplinary actions as far as the Skelly hearing. And after the hearing, I went on vacation, and then on the first business day that I got back from vacation, I submitted a letter to the superintendent requesting those documents, and they refused to grant me those documents that I need to review. I didn't even get to look at any of the documents going through the steps, and still, to this day, I haven't had an opportunity to review these documents. I would like to read an excerpt from the Skelly hearing review book. It states, confirmed with all parties involved, written confirmation must be given to the employees, copy sent to the Skelly hearing officer, the employee immediate supervisor, and the person who is assigned for adverse action. Provided in the Skelly hearing officer will have the following: a copy of the adverse action, all documents supporting the action, the employee's written response if submitted, and a copy of the Skelly hearing guide, which they never provided me with none of these documents. I had to go online to get the Skelly instructions for the Skelly review officers, and it also elaborates that I'm supposed to have access to these documents being utilized against me in respects to the matter. And to this day, I haven't had access to any of the documents. Last week, I did go down and review my file, and those documents was not in my file. That's all I have to say for now. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. Is there anybody here to present facts and evidence in support of the complainant? Seeing none, is the respondent present? Okay, the respondent is not present. The matter is with the task force. Is there anybody here to present facts and evidence in support of the respondent? Okay, the respondent is here. Nobody is here to speak for the respondent. The matter is with the task force. Member Knebber and Member Wolf.
Through the chair, did we get any response back from the SMTA?
Through the chair, we did not receive anything.
Okay. Member Wolf?
I'm a little confused of why we don't have a report from the city attorney. And there's no write-up on this particular item.
Member Johnson?
I don't know why there's no write-up, but these are also not public records. These are employment records. They may be accessible to him, but they're definitely governed by the union. And they're not public. The general public could not have access to them.
Member Wolf?
Yeah, we've had this issue come up before with regards to the health department, whatnot. If the question is whether the person that's asking for him is the actual person of the subject or whether it's some other person. And since he's the person in question, it's probably even for an employment situation, he has a right to see those documents, even during the whole closed session process. And based upon the Scully description that he had referred to, those documents should have been made available to him. Question is whether, you're right, whether they are public documents or not is of question. But the question is are all employment files public documents? Are all documents public documents? And we've had those questions discussed around redaction, that they are public documents, but if there are items that are not to be revealed, that they would be redacted.
Member Johnson?
But they are subject to a negotiated contract, so they're not like medical records. The union has a negotiated contract that we would have to see the rules about it. Although we do need an attorney's opinion, obviously, it would be very helpful. But I mean, there even CC's the labor relation department. So the beauty of the union is that you're organized, but you also have a dual contract.
Member Wolf, Member Chan.
I'm not quite following that line of thought. These are not the union's papers.
Yes, they are.
No, they aren't. They aren't. They are. The contract belongs to the city once the contract is awarded by the city, by the Board of Supervisors, and signed by the, or if this by the MTA or signed by the mayor. It's all city documents at that point. His personnel record is city property, city documents. It's not union documents. Union's an association. The union is not necessarily the employer, so to speak. It's the employee. It's the relationship between the employee and the city. So those documents, we've been down this road many times in many different arenas. Same thing with health records and police records and things like that. They're all public documents. Certain items, certain information may not be available to the public, but it doesn't mean that the document should be withheld. They could be redacted, it could be completely whited or blacked out, but the document must be produced.
Member Chan.
I remember when the first time I came to the task force, there was a case like that. I guess it was somewhere in a human resource where, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we did find violation, but it's redacted. So basically, yeah, this is a long time ago. I think it was like 05, 06.
Yeah, it's old.
Yeah. So basically, we found violation that the public. I mean, the record is a public document that the personal information is redacted.
Mr. Maxwell, I have a question for you. When you gave your request to the MTA to Ms. Chambers or Rumi Uno, is it? Did you receive any response at all from either of them?
No.
You received no response?
No response.
No response, no record, none of the records that you had requested?
No.
No response, no explanation in writing or verbally as to why the information was being withheld?
No.
Thank you.
I have one more thing to add. Under Article 23.1, it does states in our MOU that I am supposed to have these documents.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have
Member
Mr.
Snyder?
Maxwell? Can I ask you one more question? Just to follow up on what Chair Nee was asking. Nobody called you, nobody emailed you, nobody sent a letter saying you can't have these documents even? There was just absolute silence in response to your request?
That is affirmative.
All right.
And
Thank you.
You only asked them once, or like, did you make repeated times to outreach, or what was the process like?
Well, I asked them, I put it in writing one time. Then I did a follow-up with my union rep. And then she went into the office and talked to them, and she refused to let me, she told me she had to check with human resources in order for me to get Cindy asked human resources if I can have access to this information. And she never got back to me with that
The union rep or the human resources?
The
Never
union,
got back to you. Who
the
never
union
got
rep
back?
got back to me. She said she's still waiting on the response from the superintendent. And every time that I come there, either the superintendent is not there. 'Cause I work in the evening time, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometimes she's at lunch, or sometimes she's out doing meetings and things like that. So I have to follow up to my union rep. Now my union rep is back out driving, so she really didn't have too much. When I asked her, she said she hadn't got a response back from them yet either.
When was the last time that there was any like update, or when was the last time you made an effort to reach out and obtain information?
The last hearing was November 22nd of 2010.
Since then, have you tried to get that information or check in or?
Since that time, last week, I went down. They gave me a letter saying that I'm trying to access my file. I called the number that they had on the paperwork, and I made an appointment. I went down to review my file. That information that I'm requesting copies of, it was not in my file. And no one seems to know where it is, or where no one knows.
And Mr. Maxwell, the letter you sent on October 18th, 2010 that we have in our record was sent to Cynthia Chambers. Is she with MTA? Who is she?
She's my immediate superintendent at the Potrero Division.
So she's an MTA official?
Yes, she's a superintendent, yes.
Okay. She's not a union. Is she a union?
No union, no.
Yeah.
She's
All right.
with the MTA.
Okay.
Member Wolf.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order. This particular item has no documentation from our legal counsel in addition to the next item. I'm a little concerned about that because usually we'll have some guidance, and since legal counsel's not here today, we can refer to, Mr. Snyder, Esquire, to help us out, but it's a little hard to go on. I mean, we could wing it. I mean, there's some obvious issues here of no attendance, and refusal to respond and things like that. we could do that. But I'm a little concerned that this item and the next item doesn't have any advice.
Member Snyder.
Why don't you go Washburn first?
Member Washburn.
Didn't Mr. Threet have some analyses for us? I mentioned earlier that you'd sent an email, but I couldn't open it. And it had analyses for 2 matters, and I was just wondering if these are the ones
I don't think so.
that were being
They
referred
didn't
to.
have these ones in them.
Oh.
I don't think so. Well, first, I don't know whether these records are subject to the Sunshine Ordinance or the Public Records Act. So, and I don't know this off the top of my head, and I didn't have a chance to opportunity to research it. But I mean, it seems very clear to me that there's been a violation of 27A for withholding, must be kept to a minimum. Sorry, that's 6725. 6727A is withholding has to be justified. 6721E, I think, is failure to show up. I mean, I think we could find a bunch of violations here, but but they're all kind of the surface violations that are just for basic even response. They didn't even respond to say, here's why you can't have them, and that by itself seems to me to be a clear violation.
6721B and C.
Yeah. So we could find those violations now. What I think is more important and more interesting and would go more to address Mr. Maxwell's real concerns here is, are the records that he's asking for public? And I sure wish we could have some time for Mr. Threet to give us an analysis on that. I think it'd be more beneficial for everybody if this is procedurally possible to continue this so that we can get an analysis and then come back to see whether the substance of his request, whether they have to provide the records he's asking for, and then in addition we can address all of the other obvious facial violations that they haven't, the fact they haven't responded to him, that they never showed up here, they didn't give us any explanation. All of those things seem like obvious violations, but it would be a disservice to this case, I think, to if we can do something else, and I don't know if we can, to just say, those are all violations that we can address here, so be gone. Because I'd like to know whether the substantive request is good.
Is there a motion to continue?
I would move to continue so that Mr. Threet can give us some kind of analysis here as to whether Mr. Maxwell whether the documents he's requesting are subject to disclosure to him under the Sunshine Ordinance or the Public Records Act.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Member Johnson.
I would agree with the motion to continue. Would that, at this time, not include some of the violations that you mentioned? It would just be, because I disagree that it's with certainty that they did not respond. He has some, I don't think they maybe respond appropriately, but without them being here to ask specific questions, in the complainant's own words, he cited a section from the MOU that covered, that may have some relevance to how they respond and why they responded that way. So I would be reluctant to find a violation without further acknowledgement of that, unless it's for not appearing, because that's pretty clear.
Yeah, all the more reason to continue. I mean, I think my motion is not saying find a violation and continue, but continue, and we can pick this up later. Right now, it seems obvious even if it's not subject to disclosure under union rules, they still have to get back to them and say, here's why we can't disclose.
Member Monek, Member Wolf.
I would definitely agree with the continuance, but through the chair, may I ask the complainant if he would be available to attend the 25th meeting, if that's where to ensure that he would also be here to present his case. Would you be available if we do continue it to the 25th, which is the next meeting?
Yeah, I have another matter that's before you on the 25th also, regarding the side letters of agreement.
So you will be here on the 25th anyway?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Member Wolf.
So I think, so we don't lose the more obvious violations, I'm wondering if we can note those for the record, that those are to be brought up or be part of the continued discussion on this item. Because I agree, I don't want them to get lost. I want them to be clear. Frankly, I would rather take action on those items and then send that letter or send that order to the MTA, so that way it might be a wake-up call. I mean, they were just here. And so, it seems like a little weird. But at some point, it's kind of like we found you in violation for all these items. We couldn't even get to the point of the matter, but it might be a way for them to get them to show up or something. I don't know if we can do that or not, but I don't want to lose those items that Member Snyder had brought up.
Those items don't need to be lost. Member Kneber?
I agree with you. I think that we need to keep those on the table, but I'm always a little bit reluctant to find a violation for the surface stuff first and then go back into the meat, because to me, the surface stuff is the surface stuff, and if they get a finding a violation on that, they're going to focus on that and say we complied or whatever. I'm much more interested in getting to the meat and say, why are you not giving us information? And if you have a reason not to, you need to show it to us. So I'm much more inclined to put it all aside and focus on that and add that stuff on the end.
Okay.
Is there public comment on the motion to continue this item? Seeing none, roll call, please. Member Johnson.
As a point of order, when we're talking about if we continue it, do we lose the violation for them not showing up today?
No.
We can still
We
do
can
it.
still-
Okay, thank you.
That can be part of our motion when it comes up.
And one more question,
Member
procedural
Snyder?
question. So the next meeting is in 5 days, right?
That's correct.
Mr. Rustam, or anybody, is there any idea whether Mr. Threet will have an opportunity to weigh in on this by that point? Sure would. That's the whole reason we're continuing it.
One other question that we can ask.
Yeah.
One other question that I have, Mr. Rustam, is this adequate notice time? If we continue this to our regular meeting of January 25th, is this adequate notice time?
That's a good question.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is adequate, yes.
Thank you. Member Kneber.
I would also think that it would be adequate because they were noticed to appear at this meeting, and it was continued from this meeting, so they were noticed to appear for here. So I think that added time is separate.
Agreed. Mr. Rustam.
Mr. Chair, the only issue would be, would Mr. Treat have the time to prepare the document? I think that would be the question.
Has he said he's going to be at our next meeting?
Yes.
Well, so maybe he could give us some verbal assistance, even if he's not able to give a full-blown memo. I don't know.
Mr. Rustam.
Mr. Chair, I will do call him first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion. Member Wolf.
I have just a point of personal privilege. I have to leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
On the motion, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knepper?
Aye.
Knepper, aye. Member Wolf?
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Chan?
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee?
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, we have 8 ayes.
Thank you. Mr. Maxwell, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There was also a question of the same question regarding the lack of analysis from the deputy city attorney is raised in connection with items 11 and 12, complaint number 10063. I know Ms. Benedict is here. Ms. Benedict, let me ask you before we proceed with this item, is there... Excuse me, Mr. Maxwell?
It's over now.
Mr. Maxwell, your item is concluded. Thank you. The matter has been continued until our meeting of, our regular meeting of January 25th. Ms. Benedict, we are pondering whether we should continue this item. Would that pose you any special inconvenience if we did continue it till our regular meeting of January 25th?
Well, I mean, I'll keep coming back until I get an answer, but I need to make a comment briefly, if I may, about the note that was sent to Mr. Rustrom from a person I don't know the name of, who is from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, and that individual is not the person that I have the complaint against. It's very specifically against Martha Ann Cohen, who is the Director of Special Events for the city under the Mayor's Office of Workforce and Economic Development. And that person did not show up last time, nor did that person show up this time. Unless Miss Mishka Hervey, I guess is her name, unless she can produce a limited power of attorney where Martha Ann Cohen has designated her to speak, and quite frankly, since the preface and framing of why this complaint came to you in the first place is important for you to know in context to this complaint, it is impossible for this person, who I don't know and never spoke to represent Martha Ann Cohen, because it's specifically Martha Ann Cohen that I have the complaint against, not the office, not anyone else in the office, not the director, executive director, or anyone else. It is specifically the person that I repeatedly tried to get the information from who didn't show up. So.
Okay, let me just give you a little bit of explanation. Sometimes a department will send somebody else if that somebody else is knowledgeable in the matter, and
they couldn't possibly understand the framing. I guarantee it.
Sorry, Ms. Benedict, that would come out if the person who appears here is not knowledgeable in the matter. That would come out during the hearing. So
I'd still. If she's going to be speaking about a matter that I specifically have with a person that is in this office who I named in my complaint, I would like to see that person with a limited power of attorney to speak on that behalf.
That would be, okay, that would be decided if and when the hearing proceeds. The question that we have is, if we continue this matter until Tuesday, January 25th, which is 5 days from now, does that pose you great inconvenience?
Sir, it does not.
Thank you. Is there a motion to continue on this?
I move we continue.
Okay, move to continue items 11 and 12. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there public comment on the motion to continue items 11 and 12? Seeing none, roll call, roll call, please.
On the motion, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Caneva?
Aye.
Caneva, aye. Member Wolf? Wolf, excuse. Member Chan?
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee?
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, we have 7 ayes.
Thank you. Could you call the next item, please?
The next item is determination of jurisdiction on complaint filed by anonymous tenants against the City Attorney's Office for allegedly withholding public records and procedures.
Okay, is there a motion to find jurisdiction?
I move we find jurisdiction.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Is there public comment on the motion to find jurisdiction of this item? Seeing none, roll call, please.
On the motion, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Cawthon? Sorry. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Caneva?
Aye.
Caneva, aye. Member Wolf? Member Wolf, excuse. Member Chan?
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee?
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, we have 7 ayes.
Thank you. That takes us to the substance of the matter. Is anonymous tenants present, please? Thank you for coming, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, President and Commissioners. Anonymous tenants here. Right at the beginning of the Sunshine Ordinance, it states under Section 67.1, Findings and Purpose, Section C, subsection C, new approaches to government constantly offer public officials additional ways to hide the making of public policy from the public. And then subsection D, the right of the people to know what their government and those acting on behalf of their government are doing is fundamental to democracy. And with very few exceptions, that right supersedes any other policy interest government officials may use to prevent public access to information. I find it very, very strange that this is the third person song from the attorney's office says that public information is not, public is not entitled to it, when Sunshine Ordinance says it is, clearly. The city, just for the record, the city deputy attorney's opinion is required to be approved before it was released to the public. Her opinion did not have her signature on it, nor does it have the city attorney's signature on it, and still does not have the city's attorney's signature on it. We are not asking the commissioners to rule on whether the deputy city attorney did follow her department's procedures, and we are not asking the commissioners to rule on the validity of work product defense. We are not asking you to do anything that is not within your jurisdiction. What we are asking the commissioners is to decide on which records and information is information the public is entitled to view and have a copy of. The city attorney's response to our request for public records and information stated that they fully complied with policies and procedures in issuing October 6th opinion, the one in question. Yet we can't request and are restricted from reviewing the records that supports his statement. Should the public have a right to view the emails from City Deputy Attorney Gessner to her boss, Delvin Thal, and to others? Don't we have a right to public information as requested in items number 1, 2, and 3? Who are the people involved in making opinions or laws? Is this a secret? And how could the names possibly be work product? As to item number 4, this is what the opinion-making guidelines say, that the opinion, when sent to the chief assistant, must have a cover memorandum of no more than 1 page specifying 1, who requested the opinion, 2, the date of the request, 3, whether or not the request is confidential, 4, the names of the deputies who have reviewed the draft, 5, a brief couple sentences description of the due diligence of research done in support of the proposed opinion, 6, the client billing number, 7, when the opinion is due, and 8, whether the opinion is appropriate for publishing or posting on the website, and if so, why. If the request for the opinion is in writing, then the author should attach a copy of the request to the cover of memorandum. The only possible non-disclosable public information might be number 5, and that is questionable since the information is not subject to the absolute work product exemption. This 1-page cover memorandum, doesn't it have to be identified and the exemption on which they rely? If any of it is disclosable, don't they have to give us the redacted version per section 67.26 of the San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance? We believe the city attorney's staff have a fundamental misunderstanding of relevant sunshine law with respect to public records and public information, and they are attempting to hide behind the veil of that everything they do is work product. We are asking the commissioners which public records and public information is the public entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody to present facts and evidence in support of the complainant? Seeing none, is the respondent present?
I want to
Member Chan?
make a note that I know Jack Song and I serve in the board, but I have no prejudice and no conflict of interest.
Okay. Given that, does either the complainant or the respondent have any objection to Member Chan continuing to participate in this matter as a voting member? Okay, seeing no objection, no recusal is necessary. Mr. Song, please approach. Thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jag. I'm here to represent the City Attorney's Office, and I think I want to put the context of this complaint into kind of a larger picture. I think the complaint has a problem with the content of the legal opinion that was issued by the City Attorney's Office and was approved by the City Attorney himself. In the last packet in the Sunshine, to the Sunshine Task Force Board, there was a letter that the complainant had submitted to the department. We're dealing with the State Department of Housing Community Development. All of you should have received this letter from the previous meeting where this item was not heard, but I did bring extra copies. The complainant also has a copy of this letter as well. Be happy to make extra copies. In the letter, the complainant states, to the Department of Housing and Community Development, accusing of our office of wrongdoing, and the state said that it exercises its discretion and will not pursue any enforcement actions against City and County of San Francisco, and as there is no quote-unquote complete breakdown in the enforcement of the state building code. So this is the context of why this complaint has come before you today. And the complaint itself, we are being accused of not providing documents, and I just want to walk through what the complaint has brought forth today. In the original complaint, the complainant asked 5 series of questions. The first one was, who was the team leader that reviewed and did your opinion? And that was this is the legal opinion in question relating to Board of Appeals. We provided that answer, and our answers included in the packet in front of you. Who is this chief assistant city attorney that the final draft of your opinion was submitted to? Again, we answered to that. And who are your deputies that reviewed your opinion? Again, we reviewed that. We provided the answers to that. Items 4 and 5 related to memorandums, documents, statements related to the reviews by all parties involved relating to this specific legal opinion. Those documents, drafts of the opinions, communications between attorneys, between the commission, back and forth, those are not subject to sunshine. Those are actually indeed protected by attorney-client work privilege. And we don't hide from public record requests. We all for open government. However, in this case, we are protected by the law, which says that documents that are not even part of litigation process, it could be forthcoming litigation, part of attorney work, is not subject to public record requests. And we provided everything we can that the law allows us to. So with that said, I believe that our office, the city attorney's office, is not in violation of the Sunshine Ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody to present facts and evidence in support of the respondent? Seeing none, the matter is with the task force. Member Kneber?
Well, item 2 and 3, the letter from the city attorney said that we don't have to give it, but we're going to give you those names. Excuse me, item 1 and 2. Item 3, they say they don't want to give the names of the reviewers, and then 4 and 5 are documents. I don't see anything in here as to why they wouldn't do number 3. Everything that I have read is in regards to 4 and 5. Mr. Song, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Am I just missing it somewhere, or is there an explanation as to why you wouldn't, your office wouldn't supply answers to number 3, the attorneys that reviewed the document?
We did, I believe we did supply answers to question number 3, which deputies reviewed the opinion. And that's how the complaint had names of the deputies that worked on the legal opinion, and that was Francesca.
Let me see here.
Because the memo to the complaint committee states that item number 3, any documents that would be responsive to item number 3 are protected by the work product privilege.
And I'm actually looking right now on page 198, the actual letter from Francesca Gessner.
Okay.
And it says, items 1, 2, and 3 are questions that do not ask to see public records. Although the public records law does not require us to answer these questions, we answered them as a courtesy, specifically 1 and 2. So they answer 1 and 2, and then 3 is just left out. And then it says in the next paragraph, we also explained in our October 25th response that any documents responsive to 3, 4, and 5 of your inquiry would be privileged attorney work product.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of a back and forth there. I don't see a response to number 3. Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I don't know if that's just an oversight or if I'm just missing something and there is a specific reason why number 3 would be, the people that reviewed the opinion would be withholdable.
And if I could follow up on that, I mean, 1, 2, and 3 appear to be kind of the same thing. They're just asking for the names of the attorneys involved.
Right.
So it would make sense if the city attorney released 1 and 2 and also 3. That they're consistent because they're basically asking the same thing. So I don't understand why 3 wasn't included. It does perhaps appear to be an oversight. And the second point I would make is that, as far as I know, the names of lawyers who produced the document are not protected under the work product privilege necessarily. I mean, I think there are circumstances in which that they could be protected.
I agree.
And I think maybe the attorney-client privilege would provide some greater protection for the names of the attorneys, but even there it probably wouldn't apply. But you're not asserting attorney-client, you're only asserting work product. And just the names of the lawyers is not there's no work product there. It's nothing they produced. So I think the argument for the 4 and 5 being protected by work product privilege is probably pretty strong. Those are documents that they're asking for, documents that were produced by lawyers, their internal memoranda. My reading of the memo and our DCA's memo on this suggests that 4 and 5 are pretty well protected, but I don't understand why 3 would be protected. And it looks to me like it was either an oversight or something that maybe you all need to go back and reanalyze, because I don't understand how it's different from 1 or 2. Do you have any explanation for that, or do you think perhaps it's an oversight?
No, I believe that the attorneys may have interpreted differently regarding to number 3, because we did provide the answers I'm looking at our reply in section B, the city attorney's response. We did provide all that. The teams that worked on the legal opinion and reviewed it, it was all provided.
Right.
And I believe that was perhaps interpreted differently by the deputy city attorney that worked on the particular response. So, go ahead.
Member Johnson.
Just to speak to that point, in a lot of the explanation, they referred to those as interrogatories, and that because they're not public documents, they're not appropriate requests. But I would point out that 67.22, just for the city attorney's consideration, does address oral information. So it doesn't necessarily have to be documents. So in 67.22, the Sunshine Ordinance says, that a custodian needs to be designated who can provide documents or oral information related to the operations and policies. And I would think that team leaders and who reviews things for the same line of reasoning as Member Snyder stated is not necessarily work product.
That's correct.
And then I have a question for the complainant. You made a reference, and when you were talking to there being a missing signature.
Yes.
Could you explain that a little bit more? Or is it a signature that is normally on a public document that you see?
My understanding is that the opinion guidelines for forming opinions have to be approved by the attorney, by the city attorney. Must be approved by him, and he I understand he normally signs them.
Could you address that, Mr. Sung? When an opinion is issued like that, is there normally a signature, and is there not a signature on
Sure.
what he's looking at?
I don't have web access right now, but it is public. It is on our website, and I believe the form that we had updated or that was uploaded, I'm sorry, to the website does have the city attorney's signature.
And is that something that happened?
And I'm sorry, and all legal opinions are approved by the city attorney. No deputy city attorneys post his or her own legal opinion. It all goes through the city attorney.
I mean, I understand that, but how is the approval noted publicly is what I'm wondering, because he's saying that there was no signature. So I'm trying to understand, like you just said that the copy that was uploaded to the website had a signature. Was the Board of Appeals provided one without a signature originally?
I'm not aware of any legal opinions without the city attorney's signature, and I have not seen it.
Okay. But did you have access to an opinion that didn't have a signature on it?
No, I've only looked at the one in the question, and then I was told by another attorney that, and I read the guidelines that the city, excuse me, the city attorney must approve them. How else does the city attorney approve anything? He's got to put his initials there. I've seen other documents where he has his initials there, and the opinion in question, the deputy city attorney, when she released it to the public, she didn't even sign it. And then when they posted it on the website, she has her signature, not a signature, her initials on it. And that's all that's on the website.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, the respondent and then the complainant will each have 3 minutes to make any concluding or rebutting remarks. Mr. Song?
Thank you. Again, I just want to emphasize that we did answer what we can under the law, and also there's been a similar case in front of the Sunshine Task Force back in 2008, Alan Grossman versus City Attorney's Office, where it was in a similar situation. Mr. Grossman wanted memos and drafts relating to a legal opinion, and the task force actually ruled in the city attorney's favor, because those are indeed protected by the attorney-client privilege. And I think once again we're in a similar situation, but I want to emphasize that we did provide whatever we can to the complainant. The reason why we do not provide drafts or memos, because those are indeed confidential. A lot of parties involved do put their opinions on it, and we don't want that out in public where it confuses the public. Then at the end, people don't know what is the actual legal opinion and what's a draft. And that's the reason for withholding some of these memos and draft relating to publishing prior to publishing the city attorney's legal opinion. So thank you.
Thank you. Complainant?
Yes, Commissioners, I'm sorry, but I find this hearing totally injustice. I mean, the city employees constantly do this. I don't know what paper Mr. Song gave you guys. I don't know if I've seen it. I haven't even seen it at all. So I don't know what it is. If I have it in my record somewhere, it's one thing. But if he presents it to you right now, I should be privileged to review it and have time to review it and address it. He has not done that. He came up here and he said he has a copy. He said the complainant has a copy of this. I do not have a copy of it. I really object to him being here, for one. He is not the respondent. I mean, you guys went over this time and time again. I mean, constantly the respondents don't show up. They bring someone that doesn't know the case, and they interject their own opinions. They interject false opinions, and this goes on and on and on. And we, the public, rely on you to protect us, and we get the shaft, basically, time and time again. The city attorney's office released a memorandum in 2009 where he's directly related to this subject, the attorney work privilege, where he says that, in essence, that they take the law and push it to the envelope to the point where they reshape the law. They reshape the law. They make the law up as they see fit. This is ridiculous. And we cannot address that. We cannot see any of that. This is ludicrous. They work for us. We are the clients. We should be entitled to see anything and everything. Even Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.26 says that we're entitled to all documents. They can redact the documents, but we're entitled to all the documents. So I believe they're mistaken, and I hope you rule in our favor, the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Matter is back with the task force. Member Johnson.
I have a question that maybe Member Snyder might be able to help me with. If they're saying that all of the drafts and memos are work product, and I understand that. I understand that it applies in a variety of ways, even outside of litigation, because there are other kinds of matters like taxes. But what if a citizen wanted to see the approval of the city attorney? And if the city attorney signs that sheet, could everything on it be redacted except the privilege? How would a citizen get access to the fact that the city attorney actually did approve that memo, and is that privileged, that he actually approved that one? If he doesn't have his signature on the actual public document.
I may be misunderstanding the question. If I am, correct me. But I think that the approval, the act of approval, and the documentation of said approval, I think the argument for why that would be work product protected would be that that is the result of the thought processes and legal conclusions of an attorney, and therefore is protected under the work product. Now, if it were, the work product doctrine is not absolute, and it doesn't protect everything that attorneys read. Otherwise, everything they write, otherwise everything that Mr. Threet produced for us ever would be protected. That's not necessarily absolutely true. So I think it could depend on the facts of the situation, but I think the question you're asking is how could the approval of an attorney of a document be work product protected? And the answer is that is a legal conclusion.
Well, in the reverse, if the final document is approved, how can a citizen be verifying that it was approved if there's no signature on the? And if some of them have the city attorney's, initials, like attorneys do sometimes, that show that they approved the memo when it goes out, for final, how could someone verify that? And is that necessarily privileged, since it's just an approval that this is what I approve to go out to the public? How could someone?
Now, so the approval you're talking about, is that a document that's released publicly?
Well, they're saying that it's privileged. The complainant is saying that in order for a memo to be distributed publicly, the city attorney has to approve what a deputy city attorney does. And he said that there was a memo, there was some rule that, or something where he read, I'm sorry I missed that, but there was something where he read that it contains the date, a description of the research, which obviously is work product, the client billing number, and then the city attorney's signature that this is the memo that they want to go out. And since the memo that he received, that the board received, had no signature on it until it was uploaded later, is there a way that's, I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way for a citizen to get access to, did the city attorney, if the city attorney signs something, then, and it's not their thoughts necessarily, or if the thoughts are redacted out, but the signature is stating that this is my final, that I'm approving this deputy city attorney's final. If there's no initials on it, how
do you know that it was approved?
How could they have could they have access to, if it was the signature of approval? Has that ever come up, Chair Nee?
I honestly don't recall one way or the other on that. I apologize.
My understanding is that those initials are part of that document. Once that person puts it on there, that becomes part of that working document until a final approved draft that they are willing to put out there is done.
Since this one didn't have those initials, what does he do?
I don't know. I don't think that there's an answer to that. I think it's still part of the process. They can claim it's part of the process until they produce the product that they want to put out there.
I mean, I would think that the failure by the city attorney to initial what went to the board would be remedied by redacting all of the other information, at least on that front page, except the signature. Not that that's necessarily helpful, but it's not, since I can't understand any other way for the public to verify that it was approved by the city attorney, which seems like something they should be able to do. I don't know if it would require a letter from the city attorney, or, I just don't know. And there is a document in existence, or there is supposed to be.
Member Knebber.
On a slightly different matter on this, I'm still troubled about this number 3 because I'm looking over it and there is no place in here, even in the city attorney's memo on page 203, 203. Again, it talks about 1, 2, and 3 as being not disclosable because they're inquiries or they're not identifiable records as law requires. And then it goes on to say it would give you 1 and 2 and then includes 3 with 4 and 5 in the next paragraph, saying that that any information or documents responsive to these requests should be privileged attorney work product. I don't see how 3 is work product. I think it's a question about who the attorneys were that reviewed it. They are in the same category as 1 or 2. They should not be in with 3 or 4. And I am a little bit troubled with this, but I would think that the only way that I could see remedying this or see this as a violation is of 6722, because they're looking for that information. It's not an actual document, unless they can get a document that has that on it. But I don't see why this would be held back. I don't see a possible reason for that.
Does somebody wish to present a motion?
Can I just add something?
Member Snyder.
I agree with Member Knebber, and I think what the city attorney's office would say is, well, even if item 3 is not protected by the work product privilege, we don't have to release it because it's not a request for a document. So although we did it with 1 and 2, we're not going to do it with 3. And the distinction the city attorney's office makes between a question asking for a fact and a formal request for a document, frankly, I'm not sure I buy it, and I'm not sure they bought it either, because they ultimately did give answers to 1 and 2. And if we had the person in here who drafted this memo, I bet we could point out to them, and they might concede that they ought to give 3 under the same logic, the answer to 3 under the same logic that they gave the answer to 1 and 2. I just wish there was some procedural way to do that. Are you sure you don't want to give them the answer to number 3, because it's the same thing as 1 and 2? I don't know. I don't think there is a procedural way for us to do that, so I would suggest that we find the violation for failure to produce the names asked for in number 3. But I think that's as far as we can go. That's as much as we can do.
Is that a motion to find a violation of 67.22?
Give me a second.
I would move that. I would move to find a violation of 6722.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Member Johnson, you had something?
Is there a particular subsection of 6722 that you...
I believe it's A.
Yeah, A. Well,
all A does is say
yeah,
they have
I would say it'd be more under B.
Yeah.
Or
even C.
Provide information as timely and responsive as a basis as possible to those members of the public who are not requesting information from a specific person. Yeah, I would be more inclined to be 6722B. It's the role of the person to person so designated as, you know, the custodian of records shall be provided to provide information as timely and responsive a basis as possible to the members of the public who are not requesting information from a specific person.
Okay,
I'd like
so
to amend my motion to include to be 6722B.
Okay, second accepts?
Yes.
Okay, discussion. Is there public comment on this motion?
Task force members, Ray Hartz. I actually have been to several of the appeals board meetings, which actually was the instigation for this whole issue. And it really is a kind of a strange thing, because what will happen is you will go into a board and you'll say, okay, the law says this, and they said yes, but we have an opinion from the city attorney that says that we don't have to do that. And you say, well, can I see the opinion? And they go, no, it's confidential. And it's like, well, wait a minute, if it's an opinion and you're relying on it to tell us that you're not going to follow the law, then shouldn't we be able to see that? And they go, no, it's work product or some other excuse. Well, the bottom line is, what keeps anybody from simply saying, no, we don't have to obey anything in the law, and we have an opinion from the city attorney that says we don't have to, but we're not going to show it to you. You know, at first, Ms. Guzner produced a memo like Mr. Threet sends to you, and then when she was asked directly at the meeting, is this the city attorney's opinion? Well, no. And then it went on, and it's like, okay, well, the city attorney did issue an opinion, and their reply that there's no documents. I find it really hard to believe you've got a legal document who these people approved. They had to have signed it at some point. They don't just issue a legal opinion and nobody takes responsibility for it. It doesn't say anywhere on there who the person is or whatever. Every legal opinion says specifically who the parties are and who the representatives are. It even lists their bar number. So I can't believe that there isn't somewhere a paper, a document in this matter where all the people that sat down and made the decision and issued the opinion or whatever didn't put their name on it. And so for them to come in here and say, oh, well, there's no document to produce because there's nobody's name, what they mean is they're issuing what? Dozens and hundreds of legal opinions at the city's attorney's office, and nobody takes responsibility for it, nobody signs them, nobody puts their name on them. They just send them off to the court or to the different offices, and their name's not on it. So all of the information they ask 1, 2, or 3, I submit to you, common sense says there has to be a document somewhere that they sign saying, here's the opinion, and I'm the person who gave the opinion. I mean, do you really think the city attorney sits in his office and just goes over page after page after page, hundreds of decisions, and doesn't have any idea who on his staff wrote the darn thing? He just says, oh, here's a legal opinion. I guess I'll just go ahead and sign it. So it's rather stupid, I think, to come in here and say there's no document when we all know that these are legal opinions or legal matters, and at some point, if they're a legal opinion, the people responsible for writing it have to sign it, and the people responsible for approving have to assign it.
Thank you. Is there further public comment on this item?
Good evening. I don't know much about the work products, but I understand what's called internal procedures. And the CA's office says that they fully comply with those procedures. To an ordinary citizen, I would think that if you comply with all the procedures and all the records showing the progress of the processing should be disclosed. And I believe that the communications, like email from the Deputy Attorney Gessner to her boss, should be disclosed. That's the way we can track the movement of the original draft through the steps, so-called guideline or internal procedure by the CA's office. And I have a copy of the they publish and claiming the city attorney signed that the one I have doesn't have an initial or signature. So I just wondering when that was done, and after everything is published and distributed, and then this is brought up, and then somebody cited or something. I don't know, when it's published, I thought that it should be signed and reviewed, but it's not happening. And if the city attorney, Mr. Song, said it was done, then when they published it wasn't the one I have, there was no signature from the city attorney. That's what I want to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there further public comment on this item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Further discussion, Member Johnson.
I just would like to offer a friendly amendment, maybe not so friendly, but I just can't agree that a signature that approves the final product is work product or privileged. And since the memo that was distributed to the board had no signatures on it, I would like to add a violation of 67.27 for failure to provide a redacted copy of the memo he asked with at least the signature on it that approves the final version, because there was no signatures on anything that was distributed to the Board of Appeals.
Is that amendment acceptable to the second?
Yes, it is.
Is it acceptable to the maker of the motion?
What is the amendment again?
67.27.
A failure to justify withholding at least the, redacting that cover memo to provide at least the approval signature, because I don't believe that approving a final document is work product. They could have redacted everything else, because the document that was provided publicly had no signature on it. None, not even the initials of the attorney who had written it. And I just can't agree that the city attorney's final approval signature is work product. I mean, I understand how you could come up with an argument that it's his opinion that that's a final approval, but it's not, there's no work involved. I mean, there's no thoughts or research or anything like that they did. It's just the signature, and there was no signature on what was distributed publicly. So it seems as...
Please be seated, sir. Please be seated. Please be seated. Member Kneber.
I'd be much more comfortable if it was an additional motion.
Separate?
Yeah, a separate motion.
Member Snyder.
I was going to propose the addition of 6727 for a different reason.
That's what I was thinking too.
I think 6727 gets at this idea that they should have disclosed the names in number 3 better than maybe 6722, or at least it would supplement it.
Yeah, I mean that when the motion was, when you said that, that's why I wanted to be specific, because after reading over it again, I agree that the real heart of the number 3 being withheld is why. So if that would be an amendment to the motion, I would be agreeable.
Is that your intent, Member Johnson?
No, I agree. I agree with, I would support their adding that for their reasons, but I just want to, it may be futile to continue on with my line of reasoning, but I would just, for the record, like to say that I don't think it's wise that we allow them to distribute documents without a signature unless there is a way for the public to see a written approval from an authority that's a city employee who is part of their procedure for distributing these to the public. So that's why I'm saying that, because we're letting that part of it drop, because in the past we've said that entire document is work product, but I disagree that an approval of a final document without anything but a signature is work product. But I agree with the addition.
Okay, I think probably the way to go here is to take these motions separately. Member Snyder?
I just wanted to make a point about the city attorney's argument about the questions not constituting requests for public record. The definitions that preface the public information, public records portion of the Sunshine Ordinance, Section 6720, define public information as follows. 6720, Section B. Public information shall mean the content of public records as defined in the California Public Records Act. So what a question is they're asking for the names, which are contents of records, and the city attorney's office has acknowledged that those names are releasable, although they did it, they said merely as a courtesy. I don't think a question necessarily constitutes an interrogatory the way that the city attorney's office seems to think. I think it can be a request for the content of public records, and our ordinance allows for that interpretation. So I just wanted to add that as, I don't think there's a violation of a definition, because I don't think you can have a violation of a definition, but I just wanted to add that for the record as a basis for our reasoning that the names should be, we applaud the city attorney's office releasing them, we think it's great, but I think there is a basis for the release of those under the Sunshine Ordinance.
Member Knebber?
So I think we have two separate motions here. I would like to amend my own motion to include 6727. But I think Member Johnson would like to propose again 6727 for another, as a separate motion for another reason. Is that correct?
Well,
yeah, this is getting tricky, sticky.
Okay. If we find we can find two.
Yeah, the idea
separate
is
violations under 67.27.
Yeah, with specifics.
Okay. Second accepts?
I do.
Okay. So the motion then is to, the motion we vote on now is to find violation of 67.22B and 67.27 for the reasons stated by members Knebber and Snyder.
Yes.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
On that motion, Member Snyder?
Aye.
Snyder, aye. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knebber?
Aye.
Knebber, aye. Member Chan?
Aye.
Chan, aye. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee?
Aye.
Nee, aye. Mr. Chair, there's 7 ayes.
Okay. We now take up the separate motion on finding a violation of 67.27. Member Johnson, could you, is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Member Johnson, could you just repeat the thrust of the reasoning behind your motion?
I don't think that the approval signature is work product or privileged. And it was not, there was no signature on I think that the complainant has a valid question of why there was no signature on the document that was provided to the Board of Appeals, because neither the person who wrote it nor the city attorney who approved it signed it. So even though the majority of that cover page may be privileged, I don't think the final approval of a document to go out is work product or privileged. Who approves the memos is a procedure of the department, and it's a public document. It's not an approval of a draft. It's not an approval of a memo. It's not an approval of reasoning. It's an approval of that document,
Okay.
the public document.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
On that motion, Member Snyder?
No.
Snyder, no. Member Manny?
Aye.
Manny, aye. Member Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Member Knebber?
No.
Knebber, no. Member Member Chan?
No.
Chan, no. Member Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Member Nee.
Aye.
And Mr. Chair, we have 3 noes and 4 ayes.
The motion fails. That concludes this matter, and both sides are thanked for appearing here before us. Mr. Clerk, could you read the next item, please?
Mr. Chair, item 16 is announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items from the task force.
Mr. Clerk, I just have a quick question. How many, aside from the items that were continued tonight, how many complaint items do we have on the next agenda?
A total of 8.
Including, excluding what we forwarded, what we
Yes.
continued tonight? Okay, thank you.
Excuse me for interrupting. Can I get a copy of the document that the Song presented to all of you?
Okay. Announcements? Just a reminder that the Society of Professional Journalists Northern California chapter will have its annual James Madison Awards dinner honoring champions of the First Amendment and sunshine on March, I believe that's a Wednesday, March 16th at the New Delhi restaurant in San Francisco. We hope all of you can join us. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.